we got to remember that this escalation of tensions happens in the shadow of not just the impeachment trial, but the 2020 presidential race. I was in Iowa all week covering Senator Bernie Sanders. Here's what he had to say about the military strike.
Trump ignored the advice of his own security officials and listened to right-wing extremists, some of whom were exactly the same people who got us into the war in Iraq in the first place.
So now we have, Susan, a Democratic presidential race, perhaps with new fault lines. The anti-war Democrats versus those who supported intervention in the early 2000s, like former Vice President Joe Biden.
Yeah, you know, Bernie Sanders did not mention Biden's name when he said the people who led us into war in Iraq, but you know he implicitly was thinking about Biden when he said that. You know, Bernie Sanders has been, I think, underestimated by all of us for the past year, as he was in 2016. He had an incredible fundraising quarter. $35 million he raised. He has a base of support that's going to be with him from start to finish. He knows exactly what he thinks. You know, there's been no variation in the past decade in what Bernie Sanders
including
thinks
on
about
Iraq.
Including on Iraq. He is. I think reporters tend to think he won't in the end be the nominee. He's just too far left. But maybe we're wrong.
I don't think I saw him up close for 4 days, 5 days. It's a very real movement. Toluse, when you think about President Trump, is he watching Biden, Vice President Biden, and does he see Biden perhaps using this moment to underscore his own credentials?
Yeah, well, President Trump has been obsessed with Joe Biden for the better part of the last several months, going back to why he's being impeached, because he tried to get the Ukrainians to investigate the Bidens, and the fact that he's now sort of embroiled with this Iraq situation in which he, authorized a strike in Iraq against this Iranian commander. He's trying to contrast his role in the Middle East with the Bidens, with the Obama administration. He said it, the previous administration should have handled this. He said that, the Obama administration had not done enough to curtail Iran's aggressions in the region. And he's trying to use that to contrast himself with Joe Biden, who right now is leading in a number of polls nationally for the nomination.
There are two other campaigns talking to campaigns today that think they can maybe seize on this moment, in addition to Biden and Sanders. Also, Pete Buttigieg, his military experience, this is a comfort zone for him talking about this. He feels like he has authority there. The other one to watch, Tulsi Gabbard. I know her polling, it puts her at the low end, but I think this is her issue. She likes to say she is against perpetual war. I had a family member text me tonight, I'm donating to Tulsi Gabbard right now because of what the president did.
And you look at the past, we've seen presidential races before turn on foreign policy. The Democratic primary race in 2004, around this time in the race, you saw a real move with the capture of Saddam Hussein, changed the way Democrats thought about who they would pick, moved away from Howard Dean toward Kerry. We saw in 2007 a move toward McCain amid the surge in Iraq. Could this be a critical juncture?
It could be. I mean, I think it can play in different ways. Is this a moment where the Bernie Sanders and Tulsi Gabbards of the race focus voter attention on foreign policy in a way that it has not been before and say we're headed into a really dangerous moment? And look, all the forces that pushed us into war with Iraq, which was such a catastrophe and Democrats hate so much, they're back at it. And you need someone strong like me, like a Bernie Sanders, who has been unwavering on this, to be the nominee and prevent that from happening, or are voters looking for experience? I mean, the guy who has been in the Situation Room for hundreds of hours, has traveled all through the Middle East, and that's a Joe Biden, and that's a guy who knows how the machinery of foreign policy works and knows how the national security machine works. And I think it's unpredictable. I mean, I remember, John Kerry may have benefited from the capture of Saddam, but boy, he was all over the place on his position on the Iraq War. A lot of Democrats were very frustrated he was not standing up more firmly against George W. Bush at a time when the insurgency was taking off, and still managed to grab the nomination in Iowa, which is a pretty dovish state overall. So I think it's very unpredictable.
Susan, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, only time will tell.
Only time will tell, yeah.
Not a lot
we
of
shall
time.
see.
Not a lot of time.
Before Iowa,
Before
no, it's
Iowa.
coming up. So, I mean, we've been talking about 2020 since like 2016, but now we're right in the weeks leading
We're
up
a month
to the
away
point
from Iowa,
where the first vote will have a big impact on the second vote in New Hampshire, which will have a big input on the third vote. We are into it.
Toluse, we were talking to White House officials all day who said the president is paying very close attention to this. He thinks the Democrats are stepping into a political trap in the sense that they're criticizing him over this strike. and he believes he can get a lot of credit from independent and swing voters.
Yeah, Trump campaign officials have pushed this message for several weeks in that whenever President Trump does something that's good for national security, the Democrats cry foul, they whine, they can't root for America, and they're not happy that the country has done something well. And President Trump has keyed into that as well. And I think you will hear that from him on the campaign trail when he talks about, we got Baghdadi, we took out Soleimani. This is something that the whole country should be proud of, and the Democrats are whining about it and complaining.
But we're not hearing the phrase regime change yet, are we?
He's only said that in that he's not pushing for regime change. He knows how much of an undertaking that would be for the country, and he knows that he has campaigned on not trying to change the cultures of the Middle East.
Past presidents have thought they could control situations like this.
Exactly. The two biggest risks for approval ratings for any president are an economy that tanks and a war that goes south.